All right. Well, thanks, Deirdre. And thanks to Meadow at Home for sponsoring this. We did the first one right at the beginning of the COVID epidemic when people were baking like crazy. We're, I hope, close to the end of the epidemic. And I hope people are still baking like crazy because it's a great thing to do. I don't, can you? I don't know.
I don't know how to do it.
My wife, Barb Schneider, and my sister, Peg Clement, are helping out behind the scenes here. Deirdre has or will send out a recipe, a couple of recipes and a couple of hints in a document, so there's no need to take notes. We're trying to get it so we can see. How about if we click on me?
What about at the bottom?
Are you guys hearing me? Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Well, they're probably on mute.
There, yes, we can hear
we
you
hear you.
fine.
You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, we're trying to get it so we can see ourselves and it's not really working. Bear with us, please. Pin. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so thanks for all this. Deirdre is sending out a recipe list for 2 types of crusts, which if you haven't gotten, you can get from her. There's also a few hints about what I'm going to talk about, reminders. She's also recording it, so if you want to reference something that was some little pearl that was said at one point or another, you can review it on Meadow at Home's YouTube channel. We're going to give you an outline of what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about some of the tools I use. I'm going to talk about some of the ingredients. We're going to talk about how to make dough, and we're going to make some dough today. How to shape the dough. Usually in the winter, we cook in the oven, and I'm not going to bother with that today. That's pretty basic. You just put it in the oven. I was experimented last summer on using the outdoor grill. We have a gas grill. And it was so hot that turning on the oven for pizzas just seemed like torture. So I've been working on grilling them outside without using the oven. I'm not an expert. I'm a pizza enthusiast, not a pizza expert. It's a work in progress. And I hope to give you a starting point to do some experimentation of your own. So we're not going to use the oven. We're going to use the grill. And we'll talk about some of the toppings that we use that I've come up with, and maybe there can be some suggestions from you guys as to what you might use.
Tell them if they are going to use the oven to turn it on. So
Is anyone actually baking right now? All right, if you are, go ahead and turn the oven on to 500, as high as it will go. And by the way, with regards to questions, you have these little tiny blobs to the right of my screen. I can't see you very well, and I can't see the little raised hand icon. Feel free to ask questions. Just unmute yourself and barge right in at any point. And that's probably the most timely way to do it. We'll have a little question and answer at the end too, if anyone's shy about jumping in. So to start out with some of the tools, most of these are really helpful and very few of them are mandatory. The first is a pizza peel or pizza paddle. It's called a peel, P-E-E-L for some reason, I don't know why, but it's just very handy for moving your pizza around. There are metal varieties. I use this on the grill so I don't burn up my wood one. Super handy. A pizza stone heats up in the oven or on the grill and has a good thermal inertia. It holds its heat quite well, and it gets a much browner crust. This is just some sort of pottery. They're available for, I don't know, $15 or $20. This is a very thin one. It's only about 1/4 of an inch thick. I broke one of these on our grill, didn't handle the heat stress or something, and I replaced it with one that's probably 5/8 of an inch thick, much stouter. And it holds a lot more heat, and I suspect it's a lot more resistant to any damage in the grill. So if you're buying one, think about getting one of the thicker ones, the 5/8 of an inch thick. I measure out all ingredients with a kitchen scale. I do it in grams. It's much more accurate and volumetric measuring has a lot of problems. On the recipe list is included a cup of this or a teaspoon of that, but mainly it starts with the number of grams, and this is just really, really helpful for consistency. For $2.95, you can buy a flexible plastic scraper from King Arthur, probably in any hardware store. It's got a kitchen store. It's got a curved lower edge, so it follows the contour of the bowl quite well. This thing is super useful. And your pizza slicer, self-explanatory. Sorry, it's granite. Finally, moisture is the enemy of pizza. You'll take a nice crisp crust and turn it into a soggy sponge if you don't keep it dry. This is completely optional, but when I take a pizza out of the oven or off the grill, I put it on a little rack. I'll elevate this on a couple of juice glasses or something, so the bottom side of the crust can steam off, and that steam gets out of the crust and leaves it with, I think, a much nicer crust. Totally optional.
What can you use if you don't have a
What can you use if you don't have a pizza peel? You can use a smooth cutting board. A textured cutting board like the cobblestone plastic boards won't work very well. You won't be able to slide your pizza crust off it very easily. But a smooth wooden cutting board might work. That's the best substitute I can think of. If you don't have a pizza stone, you can cook pizzas in just a cookie sheet. I don't think I'd do that on the grill. I think you'll turn it jet black very quickly. You'll burn it badly. But you can use a cookie sheet in the oven if you want to try that. Ingredients: all-purpose flour. No need for bread flour or high-protein flour or the triple-aught flour imported out of Italy. Just plain old all-purpose flour. I use King Arthur. I think that's a good brand. Salts. Dough only contains 4 things: flour, salt, yeast, and water. It's kind of cool. Salt, I use just regular table salt, Morton salt. Kosher salt is more expensive. It's chemically identical, and you can use either one. One illustration of the advantage of measuring ingredients by weight rather than by volume is the fact that kosher salt is quite fluffy. And I measured this out one day. A tablespoon of kosher salt weighed 5 grams, and a tablespoon of iodized table salt weighed 7 grams. Same volume, but there was much more salt in the more tightly compacted table salt. So that's an example of why it's a good idea to use weights for your baking. But I just use table salt. There's no advantage to kosher salt. Yeast, instant yeast, powdered yeast. I get this from King Arthur too. You can get a pound brick of this stuff that's ultra fresh for $6.95 plus a couple bucks for shipping, about the cost of one of those small jars of Fleischmann's yeast in the store. You can store it in the freezer, and it just works so much better than the stuff you buy in the grocery store. If you want to get serious about using yeast, buying a pound of yeast from King Arthur on their website is no mistake. So we're going to work through this. These techniques are what I have developed. Everyone has their own particular taste, what they like about pizza. And I like a pizza that's a bit charred. I like a thin crust pizza. And I absolutely abhor a soggy crust. And so all of the things I'm doing are designed to either promote or minimize those things. And you can adapt these techniques any way you want. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. You can experiment and try different things to come up with the exact kind of pizza that you like. That's the whole goal of this. So we'll start out by making some dough and review kneading technique. That's sort of the point behind this. Whatever the recipe said, I think 480 grams of all-purpose flour. I think it was 9 grams of salt. When I mix things together, I'll have the main bowl here. You can see the flour. I'll pour the salt in one corner. You can see how it's whiter than the rest of the flour. I know that salt's in there. If I keep it separate in a little pile off to the side, you'll never make the mistake of forgetting whether you added the ingredient or not. 5 grams of instant yeast, poured in its own little pile there. And then your 237 grams of water. I forget exactly what it was. This is where your spatula comes in handy. No, not yet.
Okay.
We'll do that later. Just going to mix it all up. The spatula pulls the water around, pulls the dry flour up from the bottom, scrapes the bowl all at once.
Tilt your bowl over so they can see it.
Just chop it all up, get everything moist. Sometimes just for fun, I'll add some oregano to the crust. I'm not sure whether you can taste it, but it seems like a good idea. Now you can start out kneading this in the bowl. It's this shaggy mess. And it would make an instant mess of your countertop. So I just use one hand and just kind of start compacting it in the bowl, trying to get all that loose, dry flour at the bottom incorporated into the ball. And there we go. Now, take a look at what we've got here. One question is, how long do you need? And you don't go by time. You don't go by the number of kneading pushes. You go by appearance. A properly kneaded ball of dough is going to be very smooth. See how rough and shaggy this is? Obviously, that's not ready to go yet. It's going to be very smooth, and it's going to be somewhat stiff. If I do my finger test here and push in, that little dent is going to stay there. It's not going to move a bit. So this is not ready for prime time, obviously. And I'll repeat those little experiments as we go through this, and you can see it change. The key word for kneading is to be gentle. What you're doing is developing gluten proteins. And if you're rough with the dough, you'll tear apart those gluten proteins that you just helped create. What I try and avoid to do is I like to stretch the dough when I'm kneading, but I don't tear it. If you're tearing it, you're tearing the gluten. A good way to gently knead dough is to push it into a disc, fold it from 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock to sort of form a taco, roll it back upright, and then rotate it 90 degrees, and then repeat. Fold over, roll up, rotate. Fold over, roll up, rotate. That's great, bud. So I'm not mashing the dough. I'm not smearing it into the counter. I'm pretty much just rolling it upright again.
Say what you're doing.
Well, I'm just going to keep doing this same thing. Rotate, fold. I'll stick a hand in there to fold over my hand. Roll it upright, rotate again, etc. Now you can see it's already getting a whole lot less shaggy. That's nowhere near smooth enough, but it's getting there. Very gentle. You're stretching this side, but you're not tearing it. Notice I didn't put any flour down. You want to minimize any added flour. It's got the right amount of flour in the recipe, and additional flour will start to detract from the finished product. It's getting a little bit sticky on my hands, and I might use just a little bit of flour to dry it out, but just a little tiny bit. The least amount possible, such that the dough is workable. All right, we got a fairly smooth ball. Let's do the dent test. Push it in. That's rebounding some, but not enough. So we're not ready yet. When we're done, you'll see that it'll rebound almost completely. You'll still have a little dent in there, but it'll rebound a lot. Rotate, fold, roll. Rotate, fold, roll. And I'll do it another 20 times maybe, and we'll probably be done. Gentle, gentle, gentle.
Gentle?
So I put just a minimum of extra flour down, and I didn't even use it all. The wetter the dough, the better. It's got to be manageable. Can't stick to the counter or your hands, but just shy of that. All right, we got a nice smooth ball, much smoother than before. Stick my finger in, give it a little time, and it pretty much resolves. A little bit more, another 10. When everyone bakes bread in college. That's sort of mandatory when you're a college student. And I made a lot of bread in college, and I didn't know how to knead. And I would take the dough ball and I would just beat the hell out of it. I was very aggressive, way too aggressive, tearing it, smashing it. I figured that would somehow do a good job. And I didn't understand gluten. And I'd bake the bread and it would look okay on the outside, but no gluten had developed. And I would slice it with a knife to get a slice, and basically all of the insides would fall out. I'd be left with an empty crust because there was simply no gluten in there because I destroyed it all with overly aggressive kneading. All right, I'm gonna call that good. Nice and smooth. Comes back in a good way. Now, you now need to let this rise till double in size. Takes an hour and a half, which we don't have right now. Yeah, go ahead. We don't have that kind of time right now. I've made up some dough ahead of time about an hour and a half ago. I'm not going to use this, but I wanted to demonstrate how to do it. One nice thing about all this is you can freeze this dough. And I'm going to just cut it in half for 2 pizza crusts or skins. Sometimes I'll use the word skin to indicate an empty pizza crust. I'll form it into a little ball. Couple of old plastic bags. I'll spray the inside of the bag with vegetable spray, just a little bit. And I'll do this later, but I tie it off and I'll throw it in the freezer. And I'll pull it out a week from now or a month from now. I think one dough ball I let sit there for 6 months. I pulled it out. It takes 2 to 3 hours to thaw, but it works perfectly fine. It makes the whole lengthy process of pizza making a whole lot easier. So this dough, either recipe in the handout is completely freezable and just makes life a whole lot easier.
And how long do you let it rise? Do you just let it rise?
Right now, you mean?
No,
So
yeah.
the question is, that dough hasn't risen at all. Do you pop it in the freezer now, or do you wait a half hour to let it rise a bit? I don't know. That's the answer. I usually let it sit on the counter for a half hour before putting it in the freezer, but I can't be confident that's really doing anything. You let it thaw for 2 to 3 hours. Once you take it out and you want to use it.
You let it thaw and then do you let it rise? Or it's rising when it's
It's
thawing?
as it's thawing, it's rising.
Okay.
So that's dough. I have here some dough that's risen, and we're going to shape it into the disc or the skin. Now, because of the gluten, pizza gets tough, or dough gets tough. And the more you work it, the tougher it gets. So I like to, when it's thawed, or when I'm making it, I like to push it into a disc. The more round it starts out, the more round your result. If you start out with a piece of dough that looks like the state of Texas, you're going to end up with a pizza that looks like the state of Texas. If it starts out round, you're much more likely to get a nice round result. And all you do is simply stretch it. When it's been sitting, as this has, it's very soft, it's very pliable. And I will go to the edge where it's usually thicker and put my fingers together and I'll stretch the dough out. You can have gravity help you. You can grab it by the edge and you can roll it like this. That'll stretch it out. Of course, you want to impress your guests and you can throw it. I'm not going to throw this one because it's already a bit thin in the middle. So we'll try and do that on the next one. And then I'll sort of just
Wait a minute.
press out the edge, pull out the edges a bit, and end up with a nice, fairly round crust like that. Now, inevitably, you're going to tear it at some point. Let's say you tear some holes into it. That's going to happen. It's not uniform in thickness. Don't panic. Just fold it over, press it together. All done.
What do you do if it retracts?
So Barb asked, what do you do if it retracts? If it's real stiff and you're not at the size you want, let it sit for 5 minutes. The gluten will relax, the dough will soften up, and you'll be able to stretch it out further. I'll get my pizza peel. That dough is sticky, and it will adhere to your pizza peel when you try and shake it off onto your stone, and you'll end up with a calzone or a tortilla instead of a pizza. So lubricate or put ball bearings on the pizza peel with cornmeal. Sole function of this is to help the skin slide off when you're done. Little tiny hole, I'm just going to repair that. All right. Now I'm going to do the other one right now too. We're going to do 2 pizzas. It's been rising. It's nice and soft. It's easy to manipulate now. If it does toughen up, just give it a little rest.
Give it a rest.
You flip pizza on the back of your hands. Throw it up and catch it in the back of your hands. I'm not very good at it, so that's the gee whiz demonstration, and that's all I'm going to do because I'll probably rip a hole in it. Maybe puff it up at the edge a bit, leave a little rim. There we go.
Don't you want to use one of the
Another peel.
metal ones?
Pardon me?
The metal one?
Oh, I'm going to use that on the grill.
Okay.
Would you go check the grill and make sure it's still on, please? That it didn't blow out. All right, there we go. We got 2 pizzas. So that's how to shape the dough. The key point is it shapes quite easily. It's quite flexible, malleable. If it's been rising for a while or if it's given a chance to rest, stretch it out. Hole repair is easy and holes are inevitable. Don't worry about it. Now, in terms of cooking it, if I were using an oven, this was the middle of the winter and I'd want that heat in the house, I'd load this up with the cheese and toppings and sauce and I'd put it right in the oven. As I said, I'm still experimenting with the grill. And there's, as far as I can tell, 3 ways to do it on the grill. The first way, which I don't think I like too much, is simply shaking the skin directly onto the grill of the pizza, grill of your on your grill, a hot grill. It should be preheated and as hot as you can get it, basically, and should be preheating for at least a half hour. If you shake the skin directly onto the grill, it does work. I made this one a couple days ago. It was supported by the grill. You can see the marks there on that side. The grill wasn't very hot. I gave it a little time and I did the other side. And that in my mind is just about a perfect pizza crust. I like that appearance right there. So you can do it directly on the grill, but flipping it over and handling it is difficult. And I think what you do is you end up making a naked pizza crust, cooked pizza crust. You then add the ingredients when it's a cooked crust and either put it in the oven or back on the grill. Kind of fussy, a lot of steps. I think it can work, but that's not the way I decided to do it. The second way to do it is to cook one side. And we're going to do both of the second two ways. Cook one side, get it nice and brown, bring it back inside, and then flip it over so that you're loading ingredients on the cooked side, and then put it back in the grill on the stone to cook the bottom side and to melt the toppings. Again, a little fussy, 2 steps, but that's worked pretty well for me. The third way to do it, which I'm experimenting with, is just to take the raw crust, load it up with ingredients, and stick it on the stone and hope that the whole thing cooks. You have a hot stone, and the risk is that you're going to excessively burn the bottom of the crust before the toppings melt. A grill is a poor oven. It's hot in there, but every time you open it up, you lose all the heat. And the one-step method of putting the loaded uncooked crust in, you're risking burning the bottom before you melt the top. So various ways to experiment. I'm going to do the cook 1/2 and then load it method. And then the second pizza, I'm just going to put it on fully loaded, completely raw, and we'll see how it turns out. So let's go outside. Barb's going to induce vertigo by carrying the camera here. Sorry, no way around it. So this is a gas grill. Right now it is almost 500 degrees, which is great. When you try this the first few times, don't have a dinner party your first time, because it's hard. You got to just do some experimentation and find out how long it takes to cook the crust to get it nice and brown without being excessively burned. If it's not windy in my grill, it takes between 2 and 3 minutes on one side. So we're nice and loose because of the cornmeal. That's all you do. I purposely did that as quickly as possible to avoid losing heat. And we're going to give it about 2 minutes. It's tempting to peek inside, and I'm going to do it just to find out how it's going after about 2 minutes. Every time you peek inside, you lose some heat. So there's some sort of happy medium between monitoring your progress and avoiding a catastrophe. I'm also going to get my metal peel so I don't burn my wooden one. Back in a second.
It's great to see your kids there, Shannon. They're making pizza for tonight?
They like to cook, and yeah, normally it's Thursdays, but it might end up we might end up using it tonight thanks to this. So thank you, Jim.
That's great.
If your kids make pizza regularly, Shannon, chime in with any tips or suggestions or anything. I'd welcome additional comments.
No, we're here to learn.
And if anyone else has any questions, this is a little downtime. We got another half minute. Jump in.
Say hello.
I don't have a question, but I did call everybody
And the only person, well, I got a hold of Shannon, and there was a lady named Linda Flynn who said she was not in internet area. She said she was sorry,
Oh.
but she'll look at it on YouTube.
Okay, Linda's a neighbor of ours, so I'll invite her over for a dinner.
There you go.
It's a great idea to do something cooking like this. It's wonderful.
In the middle of the summer, you know, the house is hot already. My God, it's a lot more comfortable. All right, that was 2 minutes. Here's the crust we get. That's sort of what I'm looking for. Brown,
So cool.
not burned. All right, let's go back inside.
Just leave the door. Go ahead. Keep it on.
I love the ladder in the living room.
So that's not bad. I think I'd like it a little more charred. It's all your individual taste, and there's no right, there's no wrong. Now comes the important part, the place where I always mess up. Flip it over. Load the cooked side and cook the uncooked side. On several occasions, I've forgotten to flip it over, and that doesn't work very well.
Do you need more cornmeal on the?
Do I need more cornmeal? Nah, that's pretty slippery.
Okay.
You're just looking to see how slippery it is. So toppings, I'm going to do a poll towards the end to try and get creative ideas for toppings from you all. This is just going to be the old standard sausage and red pepper. I like to use pesto as much as possible. Pesto is oil-based. Tomato sauce is water-based. Is water the friend of pizza crust? No, it isn't. It makes it soggy. The oil in the pesto kind of acts like a raincoat, and I think it minimizes water or steam intrusion into the crust. So not only does pesto taste pretty good, but it's got the advantage of being a raincoat. It's all up to you how much you want to put on. That looks good. What about cheese? Mozzarella is the classic. Great texture, nice and stringy. To my taste buds, mozzarella has no taste. It's the most bland, boring cheese around. Love the texture, don't like the lack of taste. We've been using Manchego cheese a fair amount. You can buy a nice wheel section of Manchego at Costco for about $8 a pound. It's not exorbitant, and in the quantity you get, it's reasonably priced, and it's got a real flavor to it. So we like Manchego. This is about 2/3 Manchego, 1/3 mozzarella, and we had a block of Parmesan lying around, so I threw a little Parmesan in too. But I encourage you to think beyond the mozzarella paradigm and experiment a bit. I usually put a little cheese down first. I think that elevates the ingredients off the crust a bit so they don't soak in the moisture. A little red pepper. The temptation when you're loading up a pizza with toppings, there's two things. Number one, you put too much on. If you can restrain yourself and do a sparse topping, it's usually better. Excess toppings result in a soggy crust. And the second thing is, what's the second thing? Too many toppings?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll think of it. That looks good. Little sausage.
Should you pre-cook your sausage?
We have done pizzas with uncooked sausage and pre-cooked sausage. You don't need to pre-cook it. You can even crack an egg on top of a pizza and it'll cook, at least in the oven. The egg will cook as the crust cooks. The uncooked sausage ends up pretty greasy. I prefer to cook it ahead of time and drain the grease. I remember the other thing about loading things. There's a temptation just to go right to the center of that pizza, and you end up with this mound of topping that's all in the middle. Make an effort to get it around the periphery, and you'll get better slices when you're done. I haven't listed quantities for toppings. That's totally up to you. I like cheese. Et voila. All right, let's go back up and cook the other side. There's some burned cornmeal on there that I shoveled off. And we got 39 even. This is where it gets kind of tricky. The heat of this grill needs to melt the toppings, needs to melt the cheese. And so you want to leave it in as long as possible to get a good top melt. But every second you leave it in longer runs the risk of burning the bottom. I have no magic hints for that except experience. I baked the first half of this crust for 2 minutes, and it browned a bit, but it certainly didn't char much. So I feel comfortable thinking about, I don't know, 2.5, maybe 3 minutes. And I'll take a look at it after maybe, I think I'll wait a full 2.5 minutes and I'll take a look at it and cross my fingers. It's sitting at about 440 degrees right now. In the oven, depends on your oven temperature, but I will usually end up cooking a pizza in the oven at 500 degrees for about 12 minutes. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but let's call it an average of 12 minutes. And I'll be doing the same thing. I'll open the oven periodically, let some of the heat out, but I'll take a look at the bottom of the crust and see how it looks. Definitely longer in the oven. All right, we got about 15 seconds to go. Oh, actually, I'm going to wait 2.5 minutes.
What are you going to put it on?
Could you put that grill on a couple of juice glasses, elevated a bit, please? I did this the other day when there was a high wind, and the wind blew heat out of the grill. The grill was nowhere near as hot, and I probably doubled cooking times. I suspect if you do this in the middle of winter, you'd have to do it for a longer time too. Okay, the melt is not great. The bottom is not yet severely charred, so I'm going to leave it in for another minute. I suppose you could do this on a charcoal grill too, but the gas grill just works so well. That's what I think. You have a lot more control over things. Anybody got topping suggestions? I went to a pizza restaurant in Boise a few years ago and ordered their bacon clam pizza, which certainly sounded great. I can't say I particularly liked it, but it sure sounded good. I'm always looking for suggestions.
Caramelized onions. So our favorite one is caramelized onions, figs, and goat cheese.
All right.
We did.
Onions can be a little bit wet. Do you use a tomato sauce or an oil-based sauce?
What do we? You just use oil. That's just olive oil when we do it that way. But we caramelize the onions first, so they're not too. Yeah, I guess they're not too tricky.
Good.
And then you drizzle it with balsamic.
Yes,
reduction.
I'm going to do that with one of these. That's a really good idea. All right, we got a pretty good melt there. I'm going to call that good. I'll show you the underside when we go back inside.
Great cinematographers.
So I'm going to put it on the rack here so it steams off. I'd like a little more melt on top. You know, that's not ideal, but it looks okay. The underside, I like that. I like a little burn. Barb doesn't, but I do. So that's all done. Can we eat? All right, let's try this one out. I'm gonna load the uncooked pizza and cross my fingers that the thing cooks thoroughly without burning too much in the bottom. This is a bit of an experiment, but that's what pizza making is all about. Just try things.
Talk to them also about you don't need a sauce, you could just put oil.
Yeah, I think Shannon just said that. You don't have to have a flavored sauce. It doesn't have to be tomato or pesto. Plain old olive oil.
Or
Nothing
one
wrong
of
with
the
that.
special olive oils would be good.
Or special olive oils, yeah. Like what?
I don't know, like all the different kinds they have at Glover's.
Okay. All the, what are they, flavored?
Yeah.
All right, cool. We got to try that. Second pizza is a little more imaginative. We have asparagus, arugula, and walnuts. Little cheese down first to keep things off the crust, maybe.
Can they see you?
Smells good.
No. Here, let me back up some. Maybe you could tilt it down some.
I'm off to the.
I took some asparagus and sliced it with a carrot peeler. So we've got thin little slices with intact heads. Or what do you call it? Intact leaves. Make sure I get it on the periphery. A little bit of arugula. Mm-hmm. I put, Shannon, I don't know what you do, but I put balsamic on after I cook it. Is that what you do?
That's what we do. Yeah. Not because we know anything, just because that's what Yeast 20 does.
Some walnuts for a little texture. Pine nuts would be good too. And we'll finish it off. I'm nervous that this is going to burn on the bottom, but we'll see.
There goes dinner.
There goes dinner. We'll order out to Yeast 20. How's that? Okay, let's go outside.
Chuck and Robin, are you in Seattle or here?
Hi, Shannon. We're in Seattle.
Okay, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
All right, I got a problem here. I didn't put enough cornmeal on. Oh no. Okay, let's get the other peel here.
There you go.
That's okay.
I don't know if they can see what you're doing. Anyway.
Now, again, burn in the bottom versus melt on the top. I just turned the heat up. The heat was not full. And I think higher heat, it'll take a while to warm the stone, but it's going to warm the air inside the grill faster. So that's theoretical thinking. I have no idea if that makes a difference, but we're about to find out. I'm going to do this for longer. I don't know, 4 minutes. We'll see what happens.
Jim, what's the advantage of the wooden paddle over the metal paddle?
The wooden paddle might burn. If I were doing it right on the grill, like I showed you to begin with, the paddle's going to contact the grill and it'll burn a bit.
So why would you ever use a wooden paddle?
It feels nicer.
Oh.
It looks nicer. I make them because it's fun, with no other reason besides the outside chance of it burning. I just get some cherry and I add an extra layer. So I got a nice fat handle, and none of these flat peels with no elegance. This has a little more elegance.
It is beautiful.
And you can get the long handle version too, you know, just kind of fun. Just fun.
Do you sell these?
I don't make enough. You know, how to turn something fun into a chore.
Right. They're beautiful.
I made some with a new type of wood I'm working with, European beech, and I'm not all that familiar with European beech. And I suggested to Deirdre, I had 3 of them left over, that we could use one as a door prize or a raffle prize or something. But a couple weeks ago, I took one of them out and used it for the first time. And it does not hold glue well. And the thing fell apart the first time I used it. That would have been pretty embarrassing. I can't sell something like that. The cherry, on the other hand, has lasted for years. So I know what I'm going to use in the future. I'm going to take a quick peek, real quick. And it's starting to brown a bit on the bottom, but we got another, I feel confident, another minute at least. I've never tried this in the winter. I think the cold temperatures outside would cool the grill considerably, and I'd have some reservation about doing it in the middle of the winter. And in the middle of the summer, I'm sometimes having them in there for 1.5 minutes rather than 2 minutes. So nothing's constant. You just gotta factor in everything and be flexible in your technique. Any other topping ideas? Bacon and eggs, maybe? Put some bacon pieces, scatter them around, crack 3 raw eggs on top, and they'll cook. That'd be interesting.
I don't know why that just doesn't sound that great.
I made one, we made some pulled pork and we had some left over. So I did a pulled pork pickle pizza. And that sounded better than it was too.
Apples could be good with the walnuts that you put on there and arugula.
Yeah. I like fruit in general. Chicken, grape, red grape, gorgonzola. That works out well.
Oh,
Pear is good. Pear, gorgonzola, walnut. Of course, pineapple. Everyone knows that one. But yeah, fruit's good. Ooh, getting a pretty good melt. All right. Could you grab the metal peel if it's not being used, please? Is anyone making pizza right now at the same time?
There you go.
Nope.
we're letting our dough rise from your instruction.
We've got dinner. This is our dinner. So.
So you're not having Denny over tonight, are you, for pizza? He was so excited about the pizza party.
No, we're going to do that at some point. He's fully immunized now, and so are we. So I think we consider ourselves a restaurant. We follow restaurant rules. So.
Look at that. We're coming right over.
Got a pretty good melt on that. I like that.
Nice.
We're going to bring the camera in a second.
It looked really good, Kim.
Yeah, I'll just. I don't know. I don't know if there's rain around here.
So let's look at the underside of this one. I didn't time it exactly, but that was 3.5 to 4 minutes.
That's perfect.
That looks pretty darn good. So we got away with it. We got a good melt on top without getting excessive char on the bottom.
That looks so yummy.
Oh, one last thing.
Yes, I'll probably be on the closest corner to you there. So as you pull up, right on your right. Okay.
Chuck, another advantage of a wooden peel is that you can cut on it. So I'm just going to transfer these over to the wooden ones. And
Balsamic.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Here,
Yeah, could you dry that off, please? And then we got thick balsamic, right?
it's the pink.
I'm going to drizzle a little balsamic on the vegetable.
Tell me again the topping for that one.
Asparagus, arugula, walnut.
Right.
And one thing, I don't know, I talked about it, but the cheese really does make a difference. I mean, mozzarella, boring. You get additional flavor with the manchego.
Goat cheese.
Yeah, goat cheese. Shannon mentioned goat cheese.
Jim?
There was one of, yeah,
Jim, this is Robin. Was that balsamic vinaigrette, balsamic vinegar, or was that balsamic glaze?
It's the balsamic Grand Reserve vinegar, so it's the
Okay.
thicker one. But you can boil it down.
I don't know how well you can see this, but it's quite thick.
Hmm.
And if we had the thin stuff, I probably would make a reduction and boil it down some.
I have some glaze. I was just, I
bet.
just found a new way to use it. So good.
I'll make one other comment. I talked about my personal likes and dislikes about pizza. No soggy crust. I like a thin crust. And I like it charred or pretty well cooked in the bottom. I also dislike albino pizza. The one that we just did, that one right there, it's pretty pale. That's not particularly appetizing. This one is more browned. In the handout that Deirdre sent out, I talked about sugar being an optional ingredient in the dough. And sugar caramelizes at a lower temperature than flour. And you can add a little bit of sugar to the dough as you're making it, and that'll end up yielding a dough that browns more easily. And it's in the recipe, but you can put in up to a tablespoon of just regular granulated sugar per cup of flour into the dough. You won't taste it. That's too small an amount to taste, but you get a much nicer browning on the dough. So if you're looking for the visual appeal as well as the gustatory appeal, then you can add a bit of sugar to the dough and get better browning. So those are going to cool a bit. We're slicing them up. That's our dinner. We went over some of the tools you can use. We went over some of the ingredients, including that sugar that I talked about. Making the dough, emphasizing gentle kneading, and you don't need to knead it that much. I didn't knead that long, but it ended up in a smooth ball with pretty good rebound on that finger test. We went over shaping the dough. Much easier to shape if you push it into a disc and let it rest for a little while after it's risen. If it gets too tough, just put it aside and wait 5 minutes and work on it some more. And oven cooking we didn't cover, but 500 degrees, roughly 12 minutes. And the grill, do the naked crust, a lot of fuss. Cook it half on the grill and then load it. More, not as much fuss, but still fussy. Or do the whole thing all at once. And I'll get back to you on how that turned out. We'll see whether the crust is soggy or cooked enough, but that's another option.
Jim, if you put it in the oven, do you just put it straight onto the rack, just like you did on the grill?
Yes.
Or the
Okay.
I used it, actually, no, I put it right on the stone, which is in the oven. The preheated
sorry.
on the stone.
Yep.
We
Okay.
sometimes, for a while, we use parchment paper, and I don't like doing that. I think the parchment paper doesn't allow steam to escape. I think you end up with a wetter crust. So I like to put it right on the stone if possible. Both of these things, with the grill and with the oven, preheat it a long time in advance, minimum half hour. Get it nice and hot and at temperature for a while before you cook them.
Pizza oven's like 800 degrees. So
Yeah.
the hotter the
So these are cooling. This is our dinner. So maybe it's a good time to wrap this up. Are there any other questions?